tonight on First at 9 this Friday, the 3rd of May 2024. Japan-funded projects. Sri Lanka-Japan Development Corporation under review. Japanese Foreign Minister to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow. Talks with Sri Lankan authorities to also focus on debt restructuring. Need of the hour. The United States assures support for Sri Lanka's debt restructuring and economic stability. The Asia Development Bank reaffirms strong commitment to Sri Lanka. BIA controversy. Cabinet approved the outsourcing of an on-arrival visa issuance process to a third party, clarifies the government. Indian High Commission refutes claim that the company is of an Indian origin. And tourism friendly. The tourism minister says that the president wants to appoint a committee to prepare national policy on visa.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9 with Ndivari Amuata and Mahish Jani. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A very good evening, everyone. Welcome to First at 9. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us on a Friday night. I appreciate your company. A very good evening, Ndivari. How are you?
Very good evening. I'm doing great.
Are you?
Despite challenges, I think that's what all of us
yes,
should strive to say.
Like every other day, a lot of news stories to report tonight as well.
Certainly. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. And we do have a number of stories. We have a visit of a Japanese foreign minister who will be taking a look at the projects Sri Lanka halted and, of course, have key discussions with Sri Lankan counterparts and government officials. But there are a number of other stories to report tonight as well.
The BIA, rather, the Bandaranaike International Airport, that incident is becoming mysterious by the minute because apparently the government says, the cabinet, yes, we gave an approval. Indian High Commission says, no,
it's not an Indian.
It's not an Indian company. So what's the nature of this company?
Yes, and the rationale behind granting this. So cabinet approval was granted. Was there a due process, tender process or government process taken into consideration when granting this company? And why did we?
Exactly. Are we that, you know, at a stage where we have to give our own visa processing to a different company, a third-party company? I mean, if it is a Sri Lankan company, yes, we can agree on. But if it is a foreign company, there is a little bit of a question about it.
And also, the clarifications made say that this company has been making such, carries out visa processes for many other countries. Hence, Sri Lanka undertook this.
But it was never for on-arrival.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the
issue. So
issue.
that's the question here.
So international-wise, the incidents in the protests with regard to supporting the pro-Palestinian protests continues to vocalize in many parts of the world as well, not just in America. It is now trickling down to certain parts of Europe as well. Yesterday night, the governor of the state of Florida sent out serious warnings to its universities, saying that please do not take measures in order to be disobedient with the law, because very strict action will be taken, because it's a Republican state and mostly Republican governors does not have any kind of empathy towards that kind of
I too did see media reports, US media reports, stating that police have been warning protesters, threatening protesters not to disobey the law. Nowhere should the law be disobeyed. But I've been looking to see whether any world leaders have condemned any of these acts.
Not even Joe Biden. Joe Biden says, yes, it is your right to protest, but you can't disobey the law. Well, funny how that message was not the same when it was going through our side of the world. Anyway, a lot of stories to bring to you tonight. Let's begin our bulletin. We begin with regard to the foreign dignitary visit from the Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs, who will be here. Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs Yoko Kamikawa is scheduled to arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow to discuss Sri Lanka's debt an economic restructuring process.
Discussions will also focus on resumption of Japan's economic ties and development engagements with the Sri Lankan government, especially the progress of Japanese-funded investment projects in Sri Lanka.
Now, during her two-day visit, the Japanese foreign minister is expected to meet high-level officials of the government, including President Ranil Wickremesinghe and Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena.
During a recent media briefing in Japan, the Japanese foreign minister reiterated Japan's cooperation with Sri Lanka in the debt restructuring process.
The Japanese Minister of Foreign Affairs Yoko Kamikawa is set to arrive in the island nation tomorrow for a two-day official visit in a bid to deepen ties with Sri Lanka. According to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Japanese Foreign Minister will hold bilateral discussions with President Ranil Wickremesinghe, Prime Minister Dinesh Gunawardena and Minister of Foreign Affairs Ali Sabri. The discussions between the Japanese Foreign Minister and the Sri Lankan government will focus on several areas, including the resumption of economic ties and development engagements, the restructuring of Sri Lankan debt, and the economy and the progress of Japan-funded investment projects in Sri Lanka. Following discussions with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Japanese Foreign Minister Yoko Kamikawa will address a joint media briefing in the afternoon tomorrow with her Sri Lankan counterpart. Meanwhile, addressing a media briefing last week, the Japanese Foreign Minister explained the importance of her visit to Sri Lanka.
Japan has built deep and trust relationship with Sri Lanka and Nepal based on many years of development cooperation and people-to-people exchange. Through the visits, we will further enhance cooperation. In Sri Lanka, I will once again state that Japan is extending cooperation to Sri Lanka, which is undergoing debt restructuring, and will affirm cooperation regarding FOIP, WPS, disarmament, and non-proliferation.
ජීවිතේ හැම තැනකදීම ස්මාර්ට් වෙන්න පොලිය විතරක් ගෙවාගෙන යන්න CDB Smart Draft.
The United States once again assures its support to Sri Lanka for achieving economic stability and stresses the importance of continuing the economic reforms enacted so far. The sentiments were expressed when the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the United States Treasury, Robert Kapoor, during a meeting with the Sri Lankan delegation attending the Asian Development Bank's 57th annual meeting in the Georgian capital. The delegation, led by State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe, also called on Yimin Yang, ADB Vice President for South Asia and the Central, West and Asian region, and held bilateral discussions on the regional lenders' country partnership strategy with Sri Lanka for 2024 through 2028.
On the sidelines of the Asian Development Bank's 57th annual meeting in Tbilisi, Georgia, the Sri Lankan delegation attending the event engaged in talks with the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the United States Treasury, Robert Kapoor. State Minister of Finance Shehan Semasinghe highlighted that the discussions focused on the progress of Sri Lanka's debt restructuring process. The State Minister also noted that while pointing out the importance of continuing the economic reforms enacted so far, Kapoor had also assured the fullest support of the United States to Sri Lanka in achieving economic stability. The Sri Lankan delegation also called on Yimin Yang, the Asian Development Bank's Vice President for South, Central and West Asia. According to the State Minister of Finance, discussions between the Sri Lankan delegation and the Asian Development Bank Vice President focused on the Asian Development Bank's new country partnership strategy with Sri Lanka for 2024 through 2028 and the regional lenders' support for Sri Lanka's efforts to restore macroeconomic stability. Discussions were also held between the Sri Lankan delegation and the Asian Development Bank's Head of Markets Development and Public-Private Partnership, Cleo Kawawaki. State Minister Shehan Semasinghe stated that the ADB officials shared the organization's experiences in partnerships that involve collaboration between governments and private sector entities, as well as in mobilizing private sector resources to address financing needs of countries. The parties also exchanged views on the policy dialogue with the government and other stakeholders to promote an enabling environment for public-private partnerships, including regulatory framework, institutional arrangements and governance mechanisms conducive to private sector investment.
Well, in the wake of the backlash over the on-arrival visa issuance process for incoming passengers to Sri Lanka being outsourced to a foreign company, the Government Information Department issued a statement clarifying that the visa issuance process was outsourced with the approval of the Cabinet of Ministers.
It also stressed that only the on-arrival visa issuance process had been handed over to the firm VFS Global, and that there was no basis for reports claiming that the entirety of the visa issuance process had been handed over to a foreign company.
Meanwhile, the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka claimed that the company in question, VFS Global, does not have any ties with India.
The on-arrival visa issuance facility for incoming tourists, previously conducted by the Department of Immigration and Emigration of Sri Lanka, was taken over by the firm VFS Global starting from the 1st of May. The firm had begun to levy a service charge from tourists seeking visas in addition to the standard visa charges. At around 5 p.m. on the 1st of April, the on-arrival visa issuance process reached a standstill due to a system malfunction. The extended waiting times brought about by the malfunction resulted in a confrontation between disgruntled passengers and officials of the firm. Amid the chaos, the company suspended visa issuance operations at around 11:30 p.m, which was subsequently taken over by the Department of Immigration and Emigration. Against this backdrop, questions were raised as to the rationale behind outsourcing the on-arrival visa issuance process to a foreign company. In response to these inquiries, the Department of Government Information released a statement clarifying that the on-arrival visa issuance process was handed over to VFS Global with the approval of the Cabinet of Ministers. The statement noted that the Cabinet had granted its approval to the relevant proposal presented by the Minister of Public Security, Derana, on the 11th of September 2023. It also noted that applications to take over the on-arrival visa issuance process were called and that VFS Global was selected for the purpose from among 2 applications submitted. It also stressed that there is no basis for reports that claim the entirety of the visa issuance process had been handed over to a foreign company, and stated that actions will be taken against any official that acts or issues statements in a manner that undermines the decision of the Cabinet. In the meantime, the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka issued a statement noting that the company in question is neither Indian nor is based in India, and that any reference to India in this context is unwarranted.
Well, in this backdrop, Minister of Tourism Harin Fernandez says that President Ranil Wickremesinghe has appointed a committee to look into the preparation of the national visa policy. Addressing the media today, the tourism minister said that he suspects that the on-arrival visa issuance delay at the Bandar Naik International Airport yesterday could be an act of sabotage. He said officials of the Department of Immigration and Emigration have failed to provide necessary facilities for the private company that was handed over visa issuance operations.
One thing I felt the justification was there's a bigger reach because VFS has 67 countries, 3,359 centers, and they have another in 149 countries. So what we are seeing is they can be used for consular services, maybe they'll be used for promotional services. All of that also will trigger both. So once you go into the system also, a person who wants to go to another country, sees Sri Lanka, might apply for Sri Lanka, right? Similarly, somebody who wants to go to Sri Lanka might see some other country and apply to that country. So it's a give and take, but I am also sure why VFS is selected by 67 countries or governments should be a reason, and also understand highly unionized places have their own control of doing things. Probably this is blown out of proportion also because certain vested people want to create a difference. So the best example is that video. You can see government officials videoing it. I mean, what more do you want? So it could complete be a sabotage. So there is an investigation going on it, and I know for a fact they have not given them internet for a while. That's what I was told by the officials who were there. And then they have said to give some additional information, so the queue gets long and the delay time was happening. So all in all, I hope the minister will take some action. The only other solution I see is granting free visa to the top 67 countries. That way, zero, whatever the fee they have to pay for the facilitation, or which we all pay whenever we go abroad to countries that have VFS. What we can do is, only thing as a request we can make is ask them to pay TDA as service provider category. That's why the President formed a committee to look into it and give a recommendation within 1 month to make sure we have a national national policy when it regard to visas. So immigration brings something, we say another thing, foreign minister says another thing. It's constant. Like even if this government is not there, some other government come, other ministers will have different opinions. So without that, we president have suggested to bring a national policy within 30 days of time of what our visa policy is going to be. So and once that is passed in parliament, again if they want to change it, they have to go to parliament. So which has everybody's consent or the majority's consent.
Now, a two-day strike action launched by the Joint Committee on Government Executives yesterday over several demands, including salary anomalies, continued today as well.
Despite the ongoing protest action, members of the Sri Lanka Education Administrative Service, however, engaged in essential services.
As a result, candidates facing the upcoming ordinary level exams were issued relevant educational certificates.
Meanwhile, speaking in this regard, Minister of Education Dr. Susil Premajayantha assures that the trade union action will be given solutions once the demands are taken up for discussion next week.
The protest launched by the Joint Committee of Government Executives who reported in sick yesterday continued for a second day. Yesterday's protest was initiated by 18 trade unions representing engineers, the health sector, education sector and the agricultural sector, demanding solutions to several concerns including salary anomalies. Accordingly, officials who arrived at the Government Analysts Department with objects related to a court case this morning were inconvenienced due to the ongoing protest action. Nearly 2,000 officials of the Sri Lanka Education Administrative Service who joined the trade union action are currently engaged only in essential services. As a result, candidates facing O-level were issued their educational certificates today. Speaking further, the Joint Committee of Government Executives said the trade union action will continue until their demands are met. In the meantime, non-academic staff of all 17 state universities launched a strike from 12 p.m. yesterday, demanding solutions to their salary anomalies. Concurrently, a protest was initiated by the non-academic staff of the Rajarari University this morning. On the ongoing trade union action, Minister of Education Dr. Susil Premajayantha said that the issues will be taken up for discussion next week. One of the issues they are protesting about is an issue which has been continuing for nearly 8 years. The other problem is the issue of monthly payments. I've presented the cabinet memorandum and it is expected to be taken up for discussion next week. The protesters are informed about this. However, several trade unions are politically motivated and such people will continue to protest even if their demands and issues are addressed.
Police fired water cannons to disperse medical students protesting at the Lipton Circus against the government's decision to allow the admission of local students to follow medical education on payment basis at the General Sir John Kothawala Defence University. As a result of the protest this evening, traffic from the Lipton Circus to Kolpiti was blocked, inconveniencing passengers.
The Medical Faculty Students Action Committee launched a protest march from Vihara Mahadevi Park, urging the government to withdraw the decision to allow the admission of local students to follow medicine on a payment basis at the General Sir John Kothawala Defence University. Protesters marched through the Anagarika Dharamapala Mawatha and reached the Lipton Circus. Later, a tense situation arose when police attempted to prevent the protesters from marching further. With medical students beginning to protest at the Lipton Circus, traffic up to Kolpiti was blocked, inconveniencing passengers. Police used water cannons to disperse the protesters.
Former President Maithripala Sirisena was grilled by the CID today over the statement he made on the 22nd of March with regard to the real perpetrators of the Easter Sunday attacks in 2019. Now, the former president recorded a statement with the Criminal Investigation Department for nearly 2 hours before leaving the premises. Earlier on the 25th of March, the CID recorded a 5-hour-long statement from the former president upon a directive issued to the Inspector General of Police, Deshabandhu Tenakun, by the Minister of Public Security, Tiran Alas, to launch an investigation into the statement made by the former president. Speaking in Parliament last week, the Public Security Minister said that the former president's statement to the CID had no mention of the name of a Sri Lankan.
Also in news tonight, at least 33 individuals were injured following a head-on collision involving a Sisusaria bus and a bus belonging to the Sri Lanka Transport Board. According to police, 25 school children were among the injured. The 33 injured were rushed to the District General Hospital in Ampara with severe injuries. This accident, meanwhile, occurred near the ECC junction in Ampara earlier this afternoon.
Well, the government of the United Arab Emirates announced that 44 Sri Lankan prisoners who were pardoned by a royal order on the occasion of the holy month of Ramadan will be repatriated to Sri Lanka.
Meanwhile, the Colombo High Court said that the decision concerning the plea filed by 4 defendants, including former Central Bank Governor Ajit Cabral, will be announced on the 31st of this month.
Now, with that, here's a look at more local news in brief.
The Embassy of Sri Lanka in Abu Dhabi said that 44 Sri Lankans who were in different prisons across the United Arab Emirates were pardoned by a royal order. Accordingly, the prisoners were pardoned on the occasion of the holy month of Ramadan and are anticipated to be repatriated to Sri Lanka by the government of the UAE in due course. The Embassy of Sri Lanka in Abu Dhabi will coordinate with the UAE government authorities and the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Sri Lanka to ensure safe repatriation of the prisoners. In the meantime, the Colombo High Court said that a decision concerning the plea filed by 4 defendants, including former Central Bank Governor Ajit Cabral, will be announced on the 31st of this month. The request seeks the dismissal of the case filed against them by the Bribery Commission and release of the defendants. These preliminary objections were raised by attorneys representing Ajit Cabral and the co-defendants in the case during the hearing of the case today. The defendants, meanwhile, were accused of allegedly causing a substantial loss of 1.8 billion rupees to the local government through investments in Greek bonds in 2012. In other local news, following a tip-off received by the Police Narcotics Bureau, a special drug bust was carried out in the Pamankad area earlier this morning. During the raid, a 28-year-old with narcotics with a street value of over 80 million rupees were taken into custody.
Welcome back. Business news now. Domestic gas suppliers, both state-run Litrogas, Lanka and privately owned Laugh Gas PLC, announced a reduction in gas cylinder prices today.
Now, the price revision is in effect from midnight tonight.
Chairman of Litro, Mudita Pires, indicates that further price reductions can be anticipated.
Assurances were also given on the availability of significant stocks in the market.
Now, the state gas supplier also said that orders have been placed to receive sufficient stocks to meet the demand for this year.
Sri Lanka's state-run domestic gas supplier Litrogas Lanka announced its latest price revision for domestic gas effective from midnight tonight. The decision comes after Sipetco, Lanka Indian Oil Corporation and Sinopec fuel stations revised fuel prices for the month. According to the latest revision, the retail price of a 12.5 kilogram domestic gas cylinder was reduced by 175 rupees to 3,940 rupees. The price of a 5 kilogram cylinder will be retailed at 1,582 rupees with a reduction of 70 rupees, while the new retail price of 2.3 kilogram gas cylinder will come down by 32 rupees to 740 rupees with effect from midnight tonight. Speaking to media today, Chairman of Litrogas added that more price reductions can be expected in the future.
The main reasons for this is the reduction of the global LPG prices and the appreciation of the rupee value. ඉදිරි මාස කීපය තුලත්
We expect to further reduce the gas prices in future. We have placed orders for the required stock of gas cylinders sufficient for this year. As a result, there will be no shortage of domestic gas in the future as we will be able to release adequate stocks to the market.
කියන එක විශේෂයෙන් මතක් කරන්න.
In the meantime, Lavs Gas PLC also decided to slash prices of its domestic gas cylinders from midnight tonight. This came shortly after Litro Gas Lanka announced a decision to revise gas prices. The price of a 12.5 kilogram cylinder will be reduced by 275 rupees to 3,840 rupees. The new retail price of a 5 kilogram cylinder will stand at 1,542 rupees with a price reduction of 110 rupees. Meanwhile, Cluster CEO of Lavs Gas PLC Dr. Niroshan J. Piris said that the downward revision comes as a result of the rupee appreciation and reduction of global LPG prices.
A few key reasons as to why we have done this reduction is because the global prices of gas, sourcing prices have come down, as well as the situation in the country have a positive effect and a positive impact towards this price reduction. Hence, as an organization, as a Sri Lankan organization, we have decided to pass these benefits to the consumer so that the consumer will also benefit alongside the organization.
Stock market, the Colombo bulls continued to surge with positive momentum and made significant gains during today's trading session. The market experienced a slow start at the beginning of the day but gradually picked up its momentum by midday. The benchmark all-share price index closed at 12,404, continuing trends of the past week in reaching its highest level since February 2022 and marking a 0.41% increase from the previous day, to which the most significant contributors were Bukit Dara PLC, Central Finance Company, National Development Bank, Asian Hotels and Properties and Ceylon Coal Stores, where Bukit Dara and Central Finance led the way. Investor sentiment remained strong, steering keen interest in a variety of sectors, notably the non-bank financial institutions, retail and tourism sectors. Turnover saw a decline from the previous day, reflecting slow market activity at the beginning of the day, standing at 2.5 billion rupees, with a 19.8% decrease from the previous day, where the diversified financial sector led turnover at 23%, followed by the capital goods and food, beverage and tobacco sectors, jointly contributing to 35% of overall turnover. There was net foreign outflow of 56.2 million rupees.
And the Sri Lankan rupee closed at 297 rupees and 15 to 35 cents to the US dollar today, from 296 rupees and 80 cents in the previous day. Now, according to market dealers, bond yields were down as well. A bond maturing on the 15th of December 2026 closed down at 10.72 to 75% from 10.75 to 85%. With that, let's take a look at the rupee exchange rates for the day today. Well, that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mahesh Jani.
And I'm Indivri Amuatha. Good night.